say amen. May his great name be blessed forever and all time. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, raised and honored, uplifted and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he beyond any blessing, song, praise, and consolation uttered in the world, and say amen. You may be seated. We'll finish up on page 586. All right. All right. So Moses is up on Mount Sinai, for 40 days and 40 nights. And while in the camp, some people, remember that, some people lose faith in him. They probably didn't have much faith in God or him, didn't understand this, and figured, 40 days, 40 nights, what's he going to eat? Is he still alive? Has something happened to him? At least that's what's in their heart and their minds. And so it was already in their hearts and minds to do something, what they did, where they according to the Midrash and stuff, that they approached her, and who was also one of Moses' teachers and leaders in Israel, and told him that they wanted them to make a god for them, to lead them instead of Moses, because Moses is gone. And according to that, he refused to do so, so they killed him. Aaron seen this, and they asked him, and he said, yeah, just give me the gold and stuff from your wife and your kids and everybody, the earrings and stuff. And out of the earrings, he was able to fashion a golden calf. Now here's the difference, is that, and that's what God will tell us later too, is that we're not to make an image of him at all. And so what they were doing is a little bit different than idolatry, still bad, is that they made an image of what they wanted God to look like. A young calf, strong, right, youthful. And so that's what they built. And then Aaron built an altar and declares that the next day that they're going to worship and offer offerings and stuff like that. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Ten Commandments. They kind of get into that, and even to the point where they're going to do a human sacrifice too.
If you haven't, it's an awesome movie. Very long, but awesome.
Yeah. Long, but very good. Anyways, so God is up with Moses, and and God carves out these stones and writes on them on the front and back. There's two of them. They're a copy of each. Okay, and one stone with the 10 utterances on front and back is for the people of Israel. The other one is for God. His reminder, it's even legal papers we do today, we always have at least two copies, right? One for the person and one for the other person, right? And that's what that is. And so written on both front and back. And what's interesting about the stone is that it was a blue and gold color. What's it called? Lapis lazuli. Yeah, lapis lazuli. And the stone, when God carved it, the letters were gold, and they were on both sides, kind of like this, but not like that. They weren't round like that. They were actually square, just big enough to get when it laid in the ark, to get your finger on and lift them up. That's how they were. And anyways, so he gives these to Moses, and just as he's ready to go down, God says, you need to go down because your people have corrupted the people you brought out of Egypt, right? So this is a test for Moses. This is a test for Moses. He says, God's saying, these people that you brought out of Egypt, your people, right? And then Moses turns it around, right? God says, hurry, your people whom you brought out from the land of Egypt have become corrupt so quickly. They have turned aside from the way I ordered them to follow. They have cast the metal statue of a calf, worshipped it, sacrificed to it, and said, Israel, here is your God who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Adonai continued speaking to Moshe. I've been watching these people, and you can see how stiff-necked they are. Now leave me alone so that my anger can blaze against them, and I can put an end to them. I will make a great nation out of you instead. Moshe could have said, okay, right? That's fine. But he didn't, did he? Right? He didn't. He did exactly what his forefather Abraham did when God said he was going to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? He pleaded with them, right? He pleaded for them on their behalf, that all the way from 50 down to 10 righteous people. 10. There has to be at least 10, right? And but there wasn't even 10, right? So God did what he did, but at least he bargained with God in that sense, tried to make it so hopefully it would be impossible that God wouldn't do that, right? Well, Moses is doing the same thing here. Moshe pleaded with Adonai his God. He said, Adonai, why must your anger blaze against your own people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and a strong hand? So he's reminding God that you brought us out. You brought your people out, that they're your people, right? And then he focuses on God's reputation, right? See, God's reputation is very important to him. That's why it says, you shall not use the Lord your God's name in vain. Well, he's really talking about his reputation. About his reputation is very important to him. And Moses used that. He says, why let the Egyptians say it was with evil intentions that he led them out to slaughter them in the hills and wipe them off the face of the earth? Right? He's using this against God in that way, saying, hey, it's going to sully your reputation. They're going to say you couldn't bring them in. You, powerful God, couldn't even bring them into the land, that you had to kill them instead. Right? And he goes on and says, remember Abraham, Yitzhak, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your very self. God swore by his very self that he would bring their descendants to the promised land. You promised them, I will make your descendants as many as the stars in the sky, and I will give all this land I have spoken about to your descendants, and they will possess it forever. So he's talking to him. He's reminding him of these things, right? Remember, this is a test, just like Abraham had the test. He had 10 tests. Moses is going through tests too, as a leader, a real leader. And then it goes on to say that Adonai then changed his mind about the disaster he had planned for his people. So he changed his mind because Moses was able to change his mind in that sense. He stood up for the people. He stood the gap for them, and he reminded God of his promises and stuff. And that, yes, these guys are a stiff-necked people, right? So Moses does go down. And what we want to look at next is the tablets. God created these tablets. He wrote on these tablets with his word, okay? What we now have to look at is that, what's interesting is that these tablets represent the Messiah, okay? And as Moses is bringing these down, he sees what's going on, and he throws them off the mountain, lets them fall down to the bottom, and they break apart, right? And a lot of people ask, well, why did he do that? I mean, that's God. God did that. And he said, because the people weren't ready to receive them. They weren't ready to receive them. They were in a bad place. And when we look at Yeshua, when he was here, the people weren't ready to receive the Messiah yet. And we know that in Jewish Midrash, it talks about a famous sage saying that there'll come a time that if Israel is worthy of salvation, that the Messiah will come and save them. But if not, then we'll have to wait 2,000 years or so before it happens again, and God will bring it in his own time. Okay? And so what we see here is that these tablets, just as Yeshua came from the Father, so these tablets came from the Father, right? And the people weren't ready to receive the tablets, they weren't ready to receive the Messiah. It was broken. Yeshua was put to death, right? But in a few days after Moses has talked to the people, talked to God, and God says to him, real quick. He says in chapter 34, verse 1, Adonai said to Moshe, cut yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first ones, and I will inscribe on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Okay? This is a resurrection of the tablets, in a sense, just like the resurrection of the Messiah. This is just a few days after this has happened, after the original ones got broke. Okay? And so Moses brings these tablets up again for God to inscribe on them once again. And he's up on the mountain for how many days and nights? 40 days and nights, right? After Yeshua was resurrected, how many days was he with us? 40 days, right? 40 days. So again, we see this picture of the Messiah. The Israel was not ready for the tablets that God had made and written on, and so they were broken and weren't given to them. Just as Israel wasn't ready for the coming of the Messiah, and they put him to death. But Yeshua, like Moses, pleaded with God in that same sense. And he was resurrected to life and appeared for 40 days and 40 nights to the people, to his disciples and so forth, which, to be honest with you, were around 500 people, it says at a point, that he revealed himself to 500 people, witnesses. And those are the ones he sent as apostles, as sent ones. Okay? Just as these stones, when Moses brought down, an interesting thing too, right, is that he glowed, his face glowed. And what's interesting about this is that the interpretation of the King James, which is wrong, says that that he had horns growing from his face. That's not what it was. They misinterpreted the Hebrew, rays of light. And so that's why down the ages there was a blood libel that the reason why Jewish people wore hats was to hide their horns. Okay? And that's, of course, we know that's not true. And, you know, we've seen this on, like, Little House on the Prairie when the boy, let's see, what was his name, that the Ingalls adopted. Albert. He's working with this older Jewish man who makes furniture and stuff, and somebody tells him about this, so he gets curious to see if this guy actually has horns, right? Remember that? It's a good show. Love that show. Really put the Jewish people in a good light there as well, and destroyed some of these myths and stuff too. But anyways, so Moses comes down. He brings the tablets down with him, okay? And he puts them in the Ark of the Covenant. They are to go in the Ark of the Covenant, but they go to the side. When they stop, it comes out and they sit by the side as a witness, okay? And that Moses' face glowed. And we read about here in Mark about Yeshua and the mountain of transfiguration, where he glows, where he becomes bright, his brilliance shown. God reveals himself to the 3 chief apostles. Okay? And who appears? Moses and Elijah. Moses, having to do, represents the law, and Elijah represents the prophets. And they stand in between them, which is truth. There is that the Torah and the prophets point to the Messiah. I read this on Facebook the other day, too. It was really good. But basically, it says that the Torah should lead the Jewish people to the Messiah. The Messiah should lead the Gentiles to Torah. Okay? And that's how it's supposed to work. Yeshua didn't do away with the Torah. I know a lot of people think these things. They've been taught. They've been misinterpreted, deliberately mistaught to try and divide, to keep themselves out of there. The church became anti-Semitic during the time of the Romans. Even before Constantine, it was already there, a separation. But during the time of Constantine, the Council of Nicaea, and other despicable acts that they did, that created a hostility towards the Jewish people and a separation from the Jewishness, that because of it, the Christians today have no idea about their spiritual heritage. And it starts here in the Torah. And the Torah is for this time, and it's also going to be part of the 1,000-year reign of Messiah. Okay? That's how long it's going to go, up until the end of the 1,000 years, when the final judgment is given, the heavens and earth are renewed back into the original creation God intended, and we enter the world to come. Those of us that hopefully we all make it, right, to the world to come. That's the only time that this will be done away with, because at that time, God is going to change our bodies, our DNA. It says that that in Jeremiah, that the new covenant that God is going to make. Right now, we have a taste of it. We have a piece of it. We can try and live out some of it, but it will come into its full fruition in the days to come, in the world to come, because at that time it says that at that time no man will need to teach his brother about God, because everybody's going to know. And not only that, but he's going to write it in our minds and on our hearts. To me, what I've seen is that right now our DNA is not good. It has evil in it. It's a part. That's why Yeshua had to come, change us. Why God needs to change us, because we do evil every day. You know, mankind evil in his heart all the time. That's what God says. It means it's part of his DNA at this point. It got changed in the garden when Adam and Eve sinned. That's why it says, you know, that we were born with sin. The idea is that the DNA has changed them, and it has continued to be a part of our body, a part of our physicality. But at that time, God is going to fix it. He's going to change our DNA back to where we are righteous. See, right now it's it's easy to do evil. It's easy to do good. There's evil everywhere, and it's easy to do, but it's hard to do good. And we're ridiculed for doing good and stuff like that, standing up for righteousness. But at that time, evil will be nowhere to be found, because we will have no desire for it. It'll not even come into our mind, because our DNA will be changed in such that it won't be there. It'll be gone. We'll be created in the image of that God first intended us to be in. Yes, we are created in the image of God. That inside us, we do have the image of God, but what is that image? It's not what we look like. It's His will and His purpose for us. That is the image of God. And it is in all of us. We all can be a part of this, okay? We can all be a part of it. But we have to make the choice. That's why God gave us free will, to make these choices. Okay? That we can make the choice. Choose good. I lay before you good and evil. right and wrong, life and death. So choose good so that you will be blessing. Choose blessing so you will live. Choose life. The opposite of that is the others. Evil, curse, and death. So we see the Messiah in this, and we see the resurrection of the Messiah, the resurrection of the Torah, of the tablets. So as we go this week, let's think about that. You know, Yeshua said that it talks about him, that the Torah and the prophets speak of him. Well, here's just another picture of that. And there's so many pictures of him in here. You know, the sages and the rabbis teach that that in every 3 verses of the Torah, it speaks about the Messiah. And we could go through that because it's very interesting. That's why there are many more books that are written about Genesis than about any of the other stuff. And they're thick. They're thick and long and so forth. Because there's so many things just in the book of Genesis, in the book of Bereshit, the beginnings. You know? So, also remember, you know, today is Shushan Purim. They'll be in Israel. They'll be celebrating that tonight after Sabbath in the walled cities. But we still remember Purim as a time of God delivering us from the enemies who tried to hurt us. In every generation, there's people who rise up to hurt us. And we just have to remember that God is there. Even in the book of Esther, which is an amazing book, is that God's name is not in it. But yet we see God working behind the scenes. And he does that with us too. And so we just need to believe and understand and trust that he is with us. So go this week. Think about these mysteries that are there, that are about the Messiah every time we see them. That they're there. You can see them. The story of Joseph is probably one of the clearest ones that we see. And it's amazing. So, all right. We are going to go ahead and finish up here. And we'll do the priestly blessing, page 586. So we'll go ahead and bow our heads for the priestly blessing. Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with the threefold blessing in the Torah written by the hand of Moses, your servant, and pronounced by Aaron and his sons, the priests, your holy people, as it is said. May the Lord bless you and protect you. Be your will. May the Lord turn his face toward. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. Be well. May the Lord turn his face toward you and grant you peace. Be well. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. Go in peace. Have a wonderful rest of Shabbat. Those of you who are out there in this weather, please drive safe. If you have to drive, if you can stay at home, do that. But thank you all for being on here. Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, we have our Torah Club, and we do it on Zoom. So if you're interested in that, you can go to ffoz.org or torahclub.org and see what that's all about. And just send me an email, and I can put you on there so you can join us for that. And then when we have our Wednesday night study, we're starting a new book, Taming the Tongue by Mark Kinzer. An excellent book on Lashon Hora, or the evil speaking and stuff. So please join us for that. And thank you all for joining us out there. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.